County man is in jail charged with killing his girlfriend and her mother. The victims are Virginia and Rhodacia Boston. Both were found dead yesterday at the Pines of Warner Robbins apartment complex. Now, 29-year-old Rashad Williams is charged with 2 counts of murder.
Warner Robbins, Georgia, a quiet southern town where life tends to follow a familiar rhythm. It's the kind of place where people feel safe, where tragedy feels like something that only happens somewhere else. But on the morning of May 25, 2025, that illusion was ripped apart. In a single morning, one home became a crime scene, and the entire town was forced to confront a nightmare no one saw coming. Rhodacia Boston, just 29 years old, had her entire life stretched out before her like a sunrise on the horizon. She was a mother, a nursing student, and a woman who carried herself with quiet strength. She walked with purpose, not because life had always been easy, but because she had decided long ago that she would not be defined by hardship. Every early morning class, every sleepless night spent studying while her son slept beside her, those were all steps towards something better. For her son, for herself. Rhodacia's world was centered around that little boy, 5 years old, full of boundless curiosity, and the very reason she pushed forward no matter how tired she was. She would pack his lunch before her own. She would smile through the stress. She would sacrifice silently, as so many mothers do. Living with her was her mother, Virginia Boston. At 49, Virginia was the embodiment of maternal resilience, graceful under pressure, steady in crisis. She was the type of woman who didn't raise her voice unless she had to. Her home was always open to anyone in need, and her heart was no different. She was fiercely protective of Rhodacia, yet allowed her space to grow and make her own choices. They weren't just mother and daughter. They were partners in survival. 2 women who had learned how to build peace inside a world that didn't always offer it. They had made their little apartment on Woodland Trail feel like a haven. The scent of home-cooked meals lingered in the air long after dinner. Gospel music would hum from the radio on Sunday mornings while they prepared for church. Even when bills were tight or stress ran high, laughter still managed to echo through the rooms. Love lived in that space. Simple, consistent, and unconditional. But behind closed doors, something darker was taking shape. Rhodacia had recently reconnected with her ex-boyfriend, Rashad Williams, a man freshly released from prison. Their relationship had once been passionate, but rocky. The kind of love that simmers with unresolved pain, unfinished fights, and emotional bruises that never truly faded. Rhodacia had tried to offer him another chance. Maybe it was hope, maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was that quiet whisper in the back of her mind that said everyone deserves a shot at redemption. But Virginia was uneasy. She had seen something in Rashad's eyes, something cold. Something that didn't belong near her daughter, and certainly not near her grandson. What no one realized was how quickly that second chance would spiral into a second tragedy. Rashad Williams was 29 years old, a man who carried with him a history steeped in violence and poor decisions. Raised in an unstable environment, his early years were marked by brushes with the law, broken trust, and unresolved anger. He'd spent time behind bars, most recently for assault charges, and though prison might have locked away his body, it had done little to rehabilitate his mind. He was the kind of man who knew how to charm his way back into someone's life, before unraveling it from the inside. When he re-entered Rhodacia's world, freshly released and full of empty promises, she believed, perhaps naively, that people could change. But what she didn't know was that Williams wasn't looking for healing. He was looking for control. Their rekindled relationship was like a match tossed into dry grass, brief moments of warmth, but always on the edge of erupting into flame. Friends had noticed the tension, the subtle bruises on Rhodacia's spirit. She stopped smiling as much. She answered texts slower. Her voice, once full of quiet strength, had begun to tremble at the edges. Behind closed doors, arguments escalated. And Virginia, ever the watchful mother, had seen enough. She urged her daughter to leave, to take her child and walk away before things got worse. But for Rhodesia, leaving wasn't so simple. Love and fear were tangled together like thorn vines, and sometimes, by the time you realize you're bleeding, it's already too late. On the morning of May 25, 2025, the sun had barely risen when the first 911 call came through. It was 6:35 a.m., a time when the world should still be peaceful, when birds should be the only ones breaking the silence. But inside the Boston residence on the 200 block of Woodland Trail, that silence had been shattered by the echo of gunfire. When deputies arrived, they were met not with chaos, but with an eerie stillness. The front door stood ajar, swinging slightly in the breeze, as if the house itself was too stunned to close its mouth. Inside, time seemed to have frozen in horror. In the living room lay Rhodesia, her body crumpled beside the sofa, a bullet wound to her chest, her eyes still open as though they had been searching for a way out. A few feet away, her mother Virginia lay slumped against the hallway wall, her final act likely one of protection, shielding her daughter from the storm that had burst into their sanctuary. The furniture was overturned. A picture frame, once holding a smiling photo of all three generations, lay cracked on the floor. There were no screams left, no heartbeat to resuscitate, just the lingering smell of gunpowder, and the heavy, suffocating weight of death. But perhaps the most heartbreaking part of this tragedy was who found them. In the midst of the chaos, a small figure stood barefoot in the doorway. Rhodesia's 5-year-old son, confused, trembling, his pajamas stained with tears, had woken up to a world that no longer made sense. He had tiptoed through blood to find his mother, and instead found her still, unresponsive. A moment no child should ever witness. A memory he will carry in the corners of his mind for the rest of his life. With unimaginable courage, the little boy left the house and ran next door, banging on the neighbor's door with tiny fists and a voice cracked by panic. "Something happened to Mommy," he said. And just like that, the community would never be the same. As news of the murders spread, shock turned into urgency. Law enforcement launched a manhunt that spanned across multiple counties. Rashad Williams had vanished into the morning shadows, but the weight of his crimes followed closely behind. Helicopters cut through the sky, K-9 units combed nearby woods, and roadblocks sprang up across Middle Georgia. His name and face flooded the local airwaves. To the public, he was no longer just a troubled man. He was a murderer on the run, and people were afraid. Back in Warner Robbins, neighborhoods locked their doors early. Parents held their children tighter. No one could make sense of how the warmth of a home had turned into the setting of a double homicide. The fear wasn't just of a fugitive, it was fear of how unnoticed rage can erupt in places we believe are safe. Then, just before sunset, around 4 p.m., a break in the search. A tip led authorities to a derelict farmhouse on the outskirts of Warwick, in Worth County. Overgrown with weeds and forgotten by time, the structure had become a hiding place for a man whose soul was just as abandoned. Deputies surrounded the building with silent precision, guns drawn, heartbeats thudding beneath tactical vests, but there was no gunfire, no chase. When they breached the entry, Rashad Williams surrendered without resistance, his expression vacant, as though the weight of what he'd done had already drained him of anything human. He was taken into custody and charged with 2 counts of murder.
Boston County man is in jail charged with killing his girlfriend and her mother. The victims are Virginia and Rhodesia Boston. Both were found dead yesterday at the Pines of Warner Robbins apartment complex. Now, 29-year-old Rashad Williams is charged with 2 counts of murder. Camila Williams spoke with the family about how much the 2 women will be missed.
I talked to Virginia Boston's daughter, Nomil Tucker, and she told me that her sister Rhodesia was in nursing school and working to be a better mom, and that her mother Virginia was sweet and a bright light when she walked into any room.
This is really like a huge loss for our family.
Nomil Tucker says the loss of her sister and mom leaves a painful wound. She says her mother, Virginia, was calm, loved to read, and treated her friends like her own kids.
And my mom, she was just the sweetest person ever. She loved being a mom. She loved being a grandma.
And O'Meal's sister, Radesha, mother to a 5-year-old and studying to become a nurse. Tucker says she is still wrapping her mind around what happened Sunday morning.
When I got the call initially, I didn't know what was going on. And when I got there, it was like 4 police cars there, so I knew that it was something bad.
Tucker says Radesha's 5-year-old found the woman dead and asked a neighbor to call police. Neighbor Tiffany Lewis says she feels bad for the family.
I hate that happened, though, truly, to be honest. I never thought nothing would happen like that, especially over here on this side of the area in Robbins.
Tucker says being asked how she feels is hard to answer, but she is trying to stay strong.
We've lost 2 beautiful souls, and if like anyone you know, or if you yourself are experiencing any verbal, physical, or emotional abuse, please get help.
Tucker says she expects to take guardianship of her nephew and that she is asking people for prayers and support at this time. In Warner Robbins, Camila Williams, 13 WMAZ News.
As we said, 29-year-old Rashad Williams is in the Houston County Jail charged with 2 counts of murder. Tucker says Williams is her sister's boyfriend, and they've been together for almost a year. 9 out of...
For the officers, it was a mission completed. For the town, a brief exhale. But for those who loved Radesha and Virginia, the true sentence had only just begun. Even after the sirens faded and the police tape was removed, the echoes of that morning remained, etched into the soul of Warner Robbins. Radesha and Virginia Boston were more than victims. They were lifelines, anchors. Their absence left a hole that could not be filled by time or justice. In the days that followed, vigils were held. Candles flickered beneath photographs of the 2 women, Radesha smiling with her nursing school textbooks in hand, Virginia proudly standing behind her grandson. People came with tears and trembling voices. Friends shared memories of Radesha's determination, how she never gave up, even when life tried to break her. They spoke of Virginia's wisdom, her Sunday prayers, her quiet strength. Schoolmates of Radesha's son brought drawings and cards. Grown men cried in parking lots. Neighbors, many of whom had passed the Boston home countless times without a second thought, stood in silence, now unable to forget. The community mourned not only the lives lost, but the warning signs missed. The hushed arguments, the fearful glances, the second chances that became fatal. This tragedy pierced the veil on a terrifying reality. Domestic violence isn't always loud until it's too late. It often begins in whispers, in dismissals, in overlooked bruises, in moments of isolation mistaken for privacy. But left unchecked, it builds. And when it erupts, it consumes more than just its victims. It burns through families, neighborhoods, entire communities. Out of prison and full of rage, Rashad Williams extinguished 2 bright lights, not in a blaze of passion, but in a cold, calculated eruption of violence. Radesha Boston, a young mother with dreams stitched into every nursing textbook she opened. Virginia Boston, a mother's mother, a woman who gave everything so her daughter and grandson could thrive. Gone in an instant, and yet, not forgotten. Their lives were not defined by how they ended, but by how they lived, by the kindness they gave, the love they nurtured, and the strength they showed in the face of hardship. Our sincere condolences to the friends and families of the victims. May their soul continue to rest in peace.